All right, great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our Govys. What month is this? March. Our March meeting. And I'm super, super thrilled to have Julia Silge. Am I saying your last name
You
right?
do, yeah, that's right.
Oh,
That's right.
yay.
Impressive. It's a weird one.
Well, I won't tell you what my maiden name is. Well, one day I'll tell you. But anyway. Um, well, we're really happy to have Julia here with us today, and she's going to talk to us about positron. I always get kind of mixed up. Is it posit? Is it positron? But
Yeah,
she's going to
yeah,
clear that up for us today. Yay.
yeah, that's right.
And also, as you know, we're somewhat informal in terms of introductions and things, so I'm going to let Julia introduce herself, but I feel she's well known to most folks who are here, but if not, she'll give a little introduction to herself. And she graciously allowed us to record this, so we will get it posted to our YouTube channel. And you can post questions in the chat or the Q&A. And I'll kind of keep a lookout for the questions. Julia said I could interrupt her if there was something that, point of clarification for something she's talking about at the time. But uh, for the most part, we will hold questions until the end. So without further ado, Julia, I'm going to pass the, what do you call it? The podium, the virtual podium to you.
Perfect,
And
perfect.
welcome.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for the invitation and the ability to be with you here. I'm really excited to get to talk to you about this. So I will tell you just a little bit about my background for more context about like from what perspective am I speaking. So a very long time ago, I was in academia. My research area and like academic background are in physics and astronomy. So that was a very long time ago. A medium amount of time ago, I was working as a data scientist in the tech industry, kind of like made a transition there. But then more recently, say for the last 5 years or so, I have been working full time on building tools for data science, for statistical analysis, for machine learning. And I work at Posit, formerly our studio, the place formerly known as our studio. And when I first was hired at our studio, I worked on R packages, on open source R packages for mainly for machine learning and statistical modeling, and then kind of shifted a bit about like what was I spending my time doing, worked a little bit kind of in the MLOps space, like deploying models, like operationalizing and deploying models. And then for about the past 2+ ish years, I have been working on this, what I'm showing you right here. I do actually still maintain several of those R packages, but less of my time now goes into those and more of my time goes into this. And Positron is the name of our new next generation IDE for data science that Posit is building. And it is, so we'll talk about like the relationship between Positron and our studio. We'll talk about the IDE, our studio. We'll talk a little bit about this through this talk. But what I'm excited to talk to you about today is like to give you kind of a first look. If you've heard about it, if you've been wondering about it, maybe it's possible for some of you this is entirely new. You haven't heard about it at all yet. So we're going to talk a bit about what positron is and if it may be for you, if you may be interested in learning more about it. So that's a little bit of context about where we are. So so I said it's a new next generation data science IDE. So IDE, those three, that acronym stands for Integrated Development Environment, and what that means is it's a piece of software that allows you as a user to yourself develop software. So it's a piece of software made for other people to write code of various kinds, software of various kinds. So this screenshot that I'm showing right here, this is Positron. And in this example, someone is writing a report using Quarto and R. So you see on the right side, that is the Quarto file that they are authoring. And then on the left, there's the Quarto file file. That's where they're like writing their code. And then on the right is the rendered document that they can see as they go along, like see their result as going along. So there are a ton of IDEs out there in the world. And during this talk, I want to help you understand like what's new or different or special about Positron, so you can understand like why is the company I work for, like why are we building this, and whether it might be a good fit for you individually, for your team in whatever organization you work for, or if you are someone who makes calls about what kind of tools people use, like whether your team or organization should in fact use it. So let's talk about what we mean by this. So Positron is an IDE for data science. So at Posit, where I work now, like we have a lot of domain knowledge when it comes to statistical analysis tooling, when it comes to data science tooling. And we know that someone who's writing code for data analysis, data science is different from someone who is writing general purpose code. Like someone who may have a title like software engineer and is writing code for a website or a mobile app. So like we generally, the perspective we have is like we are huge proponents of code first data science. So this is in contrast to like pointy, clicky, GUI kinds of tools. Like we think code first data science is the right call for most people, most organizations who need to do reproducible reporting, who need to do statistical analysis. Like we are all in on code first processes, but tools that are built for a typical software engineer who is writing code, they're often not a good fit for someone who is writing code to analyze data. This is there's reasons why this is true, and I think the biggest one is that the process of data analysis is more iterative, it's more exploratory. So you can write code, but you're actually writing code in a more iterative, exploratory way, not like, okay, time to add a button, I mean, that's a little reductive about what software engineers do, but I think there's a real difference in how iterative or exploratory the work is. So all across, like if you see stuff made by Posit, right, like whether that's the tidyverse or like shiny or whatever, like everything that we build, like pretty much every single thing we make or build is informed by how deeply we believe this. These kind of two things, like code first data science, and also that the people who write this code are different. Like we think we can make you, as someone who does stats, as someone who is a data practitioner, we can make you more productive by building tools that are specifically for you and your tasks. And that is why we're building this new IDE, because there isn't something quite like Positron out there. It is I guess if I were to say what is it going to be, it's like one platform where you can do all your data science. So the second thing that I want to say and explain is that Positron is a polyglot or multilingual IDE. It currently has support for both R and Python. So a lot of environments, these IDEs or environments that are built for data analysis, are specifically built to use one language for scientific computing. So there are tools that I know there are tools you've heard about that you yourself have used that are in this category. Two would be RStudio. Another one would be like MATLAB, right? Like another example might be something like SPSS, right? Like there are a lot of environments that are out there, and those aren't all the same as each other, right? But one thing that is similar about those things I all just said is that the environment where you're writing the code and working is strongly linked to one language for scientific computing. Turns out, I mean, we've all used these kinds of things. We've all done productive work with them, but there are real limits to those kinds of tools, especially for the high proportion of people who do need to use multiple languages for their data science work. This can happen literally on the same project. This might happen over the span of a week on different projects. Almost certainly it will happen over the span of a career, right? Like very few of us are using exactly the same languages now that we used 10 years ago, that we used 20 years ago, and so forth. So I know many of you are familiar with this already. Like this is a group of largely R users. You may have used R together with JavaScript to make really complex shiny apps. You may have used R together with C to write low-level code that is very um, very performant. You may have used R together with SQL, right? And or wanted to use R together with SQL and like had to somehow figure out how to manage doing that. You may be someone who uses R and loves R like me, but also dabbles a bit in Python. And you're like, but where am I going to write the Python, right? So by contrast with these IDEs or editors that are built for one language, Positron is built with front-end features that are about the tasks you need to do, and then back-end language packs that provide the engines for all those features and tasks. So instead of the front, like the UI you work with being like intertwined with the language you're using, there is like a modularity so that you can bring these different backends. So here the screenshot that I'm showing with you, if you see some of those, you see a fully interactive console, you see a place where I'm typing code, you see a variables pane where I see all the variables that I have ready to go, you see a plots pane where I can interact with the plots. If you're familiar with RStudio, this looks very RStudio-like, but notice it's Python code. It's Python code. So the Positron is specifically built for the work of data analysis, and Positron is specifically built to be extensible, polyglot, multilingual. Right now, as of today, it has support for both R and Python, but it is built in such a way that other languages can be added and extended in this way. The next thing I want to talk about is that Positron is a tool for writing code and exploring data. So data practice tends to involve, I tend to think of like three main categories that are qualitatively different from this more general purpose software engineering. So I'm going to call one sort of bucket exploratory data analysis. This is this really iterative exploratory process of writing code. The result you get changes the code, the next code you write, and so forth. Another kind of category that I would put out there is reproducible authoring. Like you need to make a report, an app, but it's not just a general purpose app. It's specifically to do with like data. So it needs to be reproducible. So we need to have, and then the other sort of category would be like the publishing piece, where we need to take something that we made and we need to like put it somewhere. We need to upload it to the Teams drive or publish it to Posit Connect or something like that. So Positron is meant to be a tool for those kinds of tasks, those like for writing code and exploring data that works well for you, no matter what language you use for data science. And like a really driving belief here is that it's not bad or wrong that your work is different from the work of a software engineer, but you need tools that are built specifically for the tasks that you need to do. And like that's right where Positron sits. So one of the big investments we needed to make in order to build Positron was new modern tooling for R. So Positron has a brand new Jupyter kernel for R that is called ARK, A-R-K. So Jupyter kernel, if you hear it, you may think, Jupyter Notebook, I guess what that's about. But what a Jupyter kernel actually is a piece of software that provides R or whatever other language, a way to talk back and forth with a front end. And it is, in fact, the piece of software that lets, say, R talk back and forth to a Jupyter notebook. In that case, the notebook is the front end. There are kernels for Python and for Julia and for like lots of different kinds of languages, right? So picture that back and forth, like R is somewhere and then there's a front end that I can type in and do things in. So what Positron does is it uses that Jupyter kernel protocol, that kind of software to manage how the back end talks to the front end in this Jupyter kernel. So it gets you these get you a lot of the sort of experiences that you're used to when you're, say, like typing code. It gets you completions, it gets you diagnostics. ARC has a debugging support in it. So that's what this screenshot shows right here is we're debugging our code. Like we're driving like I could call a function, or I could drop down into the function and I could step through it to understand, say, where a bug may be happening or why something isn't turning out as I expected. So basically, you can think of the Jupyter kernel as providing just a ton of features that improve the experience of writing and executing our code. Arc is by making this investment in this kind of modern language tooling for R, our investment in Positron actually is letting us make things better for like R in general, because this wasn't this kind of tooling existed for, say, Python or other languages, but it didn't exist for R. And so now it's there, and it can be used in Positron, but it can also be used in other settings wherever a Jupyter kernel may be needed. Another example kind of in this category is a new formatter. So I mentioned things to do with code like completions, diagnostics, debugging. Formatting is another thing that like you really need when you have, some kind of an IDE where you're writing code. And so the Positron team has built a new formatter for R that's called AIR. AIR. And this is another example of using like new modern language tooling for R that, yes, is used in Positron, but also can be used in other contexts. Like it can be used in RStudio, actually. Like you can use R, which is this sort of standalone piece of software to format your code in RStudio if you prefer. You can use it in VS Code. Like there's lots of different places you can use AIR as a formatter. And I'm kind of excited to see how our investments in Positron actually are in some ways for the whole R community, not just the people who are using Positron itself. So the third thing that I want to highlight about Positron is that it is both familiar and extensible. So it's familiar to, I bet, many of you who are in here with me here today, because it is inspired by RStudio. So here, like I showed before, this is a very RStudio-like interface, right? Like we have a place I'm writing code, we have a console where I can iteratively run that code in a fully featured interactive console. I've got a help pane over there, but it's being used with Python here. So if you are someone who has been an R user, wants to dabble in Python, are used to RStudio, I'm going to say Positron is the best place for you to kind of get your feet wet and learn a little bit more about Python. If this brings up for you questions about like, so tell me more, what is actually happening with RStudio? So RStudio is stable, incredibly solid software. It's got, at this point, like 15 plus years of real world use in it. Posit as a company is investing more now in Positron than in RStudio. So there is like more investment making this new thing than in maintaining this stable thing. But I think if you love RStudio and have no reason to switch, you should not stress out. Like you shouldn't feel no pressure to switch until there is something that like motivates you, that you're like, maybe actually I will check that out. There is no reason for anybody to feel like, I gotta try the new hot thing, the old thing is going away. The old thing, I mean, every piece of software eventually goes away, but RStudio is not going away anytime soon. Like we expect people to use RStudio for real world work for many years to come. We're committed to RStudio, to maintaining, to having RStudio as well-maintained software for the long haul. So I think I'm excited to talk to you about this new thing, but I think nobody should feel any stress about RStudio and where it's headed or what it'll be like to use it. So this may apply less to the people in this group, but Positron also feels familiar to some proportion of people because it is built on the open source components that make up VS Code. Positron is a fork of the open source project that Microsoft uses to make their proprietary builds of VS Code. So that may bring up questions as you're like, whoa, a fork, what does that mean? Practically, we update once a month from the upstream project. The if it makes you think like why did you do this? Building on this open source software that already existed allows us to focus on the data science features, on the things that we think we're good at, the things that we care about, which is making data science practitioners, statistical analysis people, making those people really productive because we know things about those users. We have experience with those kinds of users. So building on what is called Code OSS, that's the name of it, the project, lets us focus on the data science features and not kind of the general features that all kinds of people who write code need. It's been interesting working with some folks on the who came from the RStudio team to the Positron team, because on the RStudio team, basically every week or month, they kind of had this tension. Okay, should we spend our time on something that's specific to data science work, or should we spend our time on this general purpose thing that all IDEs have now? And oh my goodness, like we have to have it in RStudio too. By taking this approach, we kind of make a deal where we say, okay, we're pretty much going to accept the way things work in Code OSS. We're not going to invest a ton in changing those things, but we are going to invest a ton in what data science specific, statistical analysis specific work is like, and we're going to make that. We're going to focus on that and make that amazing. The other thing that building on Code OSS gets us is that it opens up the wide world of VS Code compatible extensions for users who want a data science specific IDE. So this is pretty different from the RStudio situation, which the ability to extend or customize RStudio is pretty limited. Like you may have heard of things like RStudio add-ins and things like that, which are you can at some level do some extension, but nowhere close to what the VS Code compatible extension situation is. Where there's just this vast ecosystem of extensions that are out there depending on your particular use case, there's just so many out there that, that can make you have your IDE the way you want it to look. Talking about this often brings up the question for people like, okay, well then why not just extensions? Like why instead of forking and making a whole new IDE, why did you not just build extensions for VS Code so that people could do better data science in VS Code? So we've thought pretty carefully about that, actually, about features that are part of Positron itself versus ones that that we can integrate with extensions. And actually, there are people at my company who do create and maintain extensions. So there's like an extension for Quarto, there's an extension for Shiny, there's an extension for publishing to Posit Connect. That's what this screenshot is showing you here. This is Positron. Someone has made a Quarto file. It's rendered there. They're looking at the results, and they're kind of mid publish right now. Like this person is publishing this to Posit Connect where it needs to go. So it turns out that not everything that we believe we need for a first-class data-centric IDE, not all of it can be built into extensions. So something like this is a great fit for extensions, the ability to publish, but that fully featured interactive console, that ability to deal with your plots in a really fluent way, that is not a good fit for the extension model that VS Code has. So it needs to live inside Positron itself, where we can make this really unified experience. it does mean that, I mean, extensions are great. Not everything can be an extension, but like extensions are amazing. And so you can integrate, of course, in Positron with the extensions we make, like Cordo, Shiny, Publisher, but you can integrate with extensions just out there from that are made by people. You can make your own extension. So the kinds of things that are available in extensions include like basically any theme you could possibly imagine, like just change the theme galore, to more maybe substantive ones, maybe like integration with platforms, data platforms like Databricks or Snowflake or those kind of things. There's this really rich ecosystem of extensions, and making this decision uh, helps us kind of let people hook into that. All right, so if talking about this makes you be like, I'm excited, I want to try it out, I'm going to walk you through some things that might help you get started. So our main website is positron.posit.co, and you can go there for documentation and installers. You can find us at GitHub here, so it's posit-dev.positron. I'll drop some links in the chat here when we get here. And then Positron is currently available on Posit Workbench if you happen to have that in your organization in preview there. So this may be bringing up for you. You're like, okay, how do I know? How do I know if it is a good fit for me? And I'm gonna share with you a few things over here on our documentation site here so that you can look at it. And I'm gonna click right here, and you can do this later as well and take a look at it. So is Positron for you? So here we are with our Govys. So I think most of you are, your main identity is that you're our users. So let's look at this, like, who is Positron built for today? So first off, Positron is in a public beta period. So we don't expect it's going to be the best fit for everyone right away. So here's some reasons why you might be interested in trying Positron. If you're someone who uses VS Code for data science, but you wish, you're like, it's not quite right, I wish it had more affordances for data specific kind of work, then I'd say that would push you towards, yes, Positron may be a good fit for you. If you are someone who used something like Jupyter Lab, but you're ready for a real IDE, like you're outgrowing what Jupyter Lab can do and you're ready for a real IDE, then I think Positron is a really great next step for you. If you are currently an RStudio user and you are a maximizer, you love to customize, you want to extend, you want to be really specific about what it does, then I would say that kind of RStudio user, Positron is a really good fit for. If you are someone who uses both Python and R, or you use R together with other languages, like if you write C++ or you write JavaScript or you write Lua, then Positron is a great fit for those kinds of situations. And now let's talk about who Positron may not be a good fit for. So if when you're honest with yourself, you're like, you know what? I'm not an early adopter type. I hate it when things change. I want something to be like work really well. Then I think Positron may not be a great fit because Positron is still in beta. It still does have rough edges. It is not ready for everyone right now. Positron also might not be a good fit for you if there are things in the RStudio IDE that you need everything it does, because Positron doesn't have all of RStudio's features. So some examples of this that I want to highlight are, like, if you're an inline output person, like if you have a Cordo file in R Markdown and you feel very strongly about the input showing up kind of in your editor versus down in the console, like we don't currently support that for Cordo or R Markdown. If you are a Sweave user, or your whole work involves certain RStudio add-ins, like not all of that is there so far. So that's a little, like, kind of some detail about Are you thinking about actually trying it right now? Then if you like some things that may push you towards or away from giving it a go. While I've got this up, I want to walk you through some of the documentation so that you can kind of look at how like what are some of the features, what are some of the things that are here. So we've got some various kinds of guides here, and I'm going to highlight a few things. So a way that Positron works is that it has these consoles, and something that is new about Positron as an R user that you have not been able to do so far is some pretty fluent support for having multiple versions of R installed, if that's important for your maybe for reproducibility reasons, or that works all very well. You also can do a fair amount of customizing or configuring how your interpreters work. So as an example, let's say, so this example is if you only ever use R and overuse Python and never want to start R, you can tell Positron things like that. There's like pretty rich sets of settings that you can configure Positron the way that you want to get it set up. Some other things that I want to highlight is are something that is new or different. I guess different from our studio is the way the Data Explorer works. So the Data Explorer. So if you've got kind of some data like this, and you click to open it up, you get some pretty nice spark lines for summaries. They give you some information, and then of course like the filter bar, which lets you do some iterative kind of initial data exploration there. So the Data Explorer is a feature that we're investing in that I think will give people something in Positron that they have not seen elsewhere. The other, we've got the beginnings of a kind of guide migration from our studio right now, just the one, but it helps you kind of understand if you're used to the our studio way of doing things, what are some things that will feel similar, and what are some things that will feel different. Like how do you go about using like if you're used to our studio projects, what is kind of the analogous sort of idea in Positron, which is basically analogous idea is something called a workspace, kind of like a workspace there. There was something else I wanted to show you. Oh, if you're coming from our studio, there's ability to opt in to our studio like on our studio key map if you're used to a certain set of key bindings. But VS Code itself that we've built on top of also has really extensive key bindings as well, if you are a key binding person. And if you do want to get started with Positron, I want to highlight that we are really grateful for anyone who is willing to try out an early project like this. And so we really are interested in feedback on things that are working for you, that are not working for you. What do you like? What do you not like? And so uh, we actively are interacting with people on GitHub discussions as a way to get feedback and whatnot. If you've also got a few questions, we've got some things outlined here that kind of get you at some of those basic questions. And I will show this. So this is where you can go to download. If you want to kind of read through some things, much like our studio does not bundle R, Positron does not bundle R or Python. So there's some information here on how to get started there. I will drop some of these links in the chat. And the other thing I wanted to highlight for you all here is that I did a screencast yesterday. Or I published this blog post yesterday with a screencast about how I use Positron for R package development work. And oh my gosh, I misspelled my URL. This is very sad. This is very sad. I'm realizing this. Tragic. I'm gonna have to fix that. Okay, so I want to highlight that as a way to and for you to kind of see what it looks like doing various R kinds of things there. And then I will, with that, say thank you. And we've got some times for questions that people may have about Positron, why it's built the way it is, questions you may have about your own use for it.
Thank you, Julia. I don't see any questions yet, but I will encourage people to put something in there while I'm asking a question.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so, well, first of all, thank you. That was fantastic, and I love to hear the philosophy behind positron. And I'm a huge advocate for exploratory data analysis, so I love that part.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, but you said that R does not come bundled with, I mean, R Studio does not come bundled with R.
That's right.
Yeah, but I think, is it true? I mean, I think it's the case, right? That if you didn't have R on your machine and you just installed R Studio, then it would download R and install it for you. Is that right? No.
I don't believe so. I think it prompts you with the URL that's like, here's where you go to get it. So it does help you if you're like, if you show up with our studio and no R, it prompts you with a URL to like go and here's where you go to get it. And
Okay.
it is true that Positron, since it's not built to be for one language, doesn't do as much of that prompting. If it is being installed on a computer and it sees no R, it's like, well, I guess this person isn't an R user, right? So it's like they, let me go ahead with like the other things that I can find on this computer, whether that's Python or what have you. So our studio does not bundle R in any cases, but it does prompt you to install R.
Okay, because I was that was kind of leading into the another question.
Yeah,
Because, okay, so I'm not a Python user,
yeah,
but one of the things I've heard about Python is that it's difficult to set up environments. And
yes,
so I think in contrast to R, where, okay, it just installs. You
yep,
click on it, it installs, it's
yep.
all. So I wondered if Positron would help with Python getting it. It sounds like no, right? That you still
Well,
have
that
to.
so this is actually an interesting question because I am someone who, like, my long time ago computing background was pretty low level, like C. I was like I wrote C for scientific computing back in my astronomy days, and when I was kind of making a transition into data science, I had never heard of R, and I was like, well, I guess I'm going to pick up Python. I've heard about that, and I came from a fairly low level background. Like, I wasn't scared of computing things. I wasn't scared of the terminal. My experiences trying to get started with Python, this is like 10 years ago. Um Nightmare, terrible. Like, I was like, what is wrong with this? Like, this is awful. This is awful. And I kind of soon after that, like, I did finally, like, I didn't come from a stats background, so I had not heard about R. And then I was like, oh, R, oh, that's interesting. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I love this partly because it is like, especially at the time, like I learned R when the tidyverse basically already existed, and I was like this functional approach to data analysis, like very like less maybe object oriented, more functional. I'm like, I love it. This is exactly the way I think about things, like such a good fit. I was like, I love it. I love it. In the intervening 10 years, it is true that the tooling around Python environments has improved. And I actually, so I feel like the two big things that were the blockers for me, with my first kind of exposure to what Python is like, is the two big blockers were that, one, the environment setup was a mess, like terrible, terrible. And the second one was there wasn't a like a IDE that was a good fit for the work I was doing. And
Mm.
I think that the story now is quite different. So for an IDE, I of course, no shock. I'm like, no, Positron is it. Like Positron is the thing that can help you. And then the thing when it comes to environments that I'm like, this is life changing. This is not a Posit project at all. It's called UV. UV. Let me find a link to that I can share with it for people who may be interested in trying it out. It is so much better. Like it basically has solved my my struggles when it comes to Python environment management. And so one of the things, so Positron right now in its beta stage, it does not have this, but one of our um, aspirations is that much like our studio can kind of bootstrap you to getting R, where it's like, oh, you don't have R, you got to have that here. That if someone, like imagine a world in which like Positron opens up and is like, do you want to use R Python? And like you kind of like today or whatever. And if you say Python and things are not quite set up right, it's like, have you installed UV? You know, like can you install UV? Like can you now, okay, do you need to make a new environment for your new project, that kind of thing. So if there are folks who are interested in like trying to maybe get unstuck with Python today, and they're curious, the Python curious, I guess, I would say go look at UV and download Positron if you're like coming from this R world. If we're talking about like longer term aspirations, I think there's space for us to build something that kind of helps that. Right now, we know our users are more early adopter types, and so we're not like solving for that problem today, but are interested in the longer term.
Yeah, thank you. So you've kind of corroborated some of the thoughts I had about and had heard things I'd heard about Python. We do have some questions, but I'm going to still ask you another question. I'm sorry, because I think it's kind of related to what we're talking about. But one of the things I thought I heard about Positron was that you could, I mean, you said this, you could use it with R, Python, and I'm assuming in the same session, you could have R code and Python code. Uh, so is it possible then? So one line is I'm calling Python, this next line I'm calling R.
So in a Quarto file, in a Quarto file, you can have those like sort of R Python, R Python. If you have one file that is plain text, that would need to be a .r or a .py file, and then those get connected to different consoles. So it's not that there's one console that can write. It's not that there's one console that can write all that can run any kind of code. It's that you can have multiple consoles. So
Oh, okay.
you're going to have, instead of in a world where you have one console, you actually have several. And actually, you can have more than one R console as well. So if that's something you ever wanted to do in our studio, which only ever has one console, you can have two now. So you can have like a long running one and like run a Shiny app in one and have another one open where you're doing things or something
Or
like
like
that.
you said, you could have different versions of R
Yeah,
with
yeah.
different consoles. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know, maybe this wouldn't make sense, but kind of in a perfect world, it would be great to have like one, you could just, it would know, okay, this is Python, this is R or whatever.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, kind of some kind of unified situation.
Yeah, but I really do think that having an IDE that does allow different computing, environments or software, I don't know what to call it, but
Hmm.
engines
Yeah, yeah.
that that's really important for the future because uh, in what we struggle with a lot over the years is, first of all, going away from commercial software and trying to get open source. But then it's, oh, people say, oh, well, I have to choose Python or I have to choose R. And I think, well, why do we have to choose one or the other? Because then we're still going to be back in the same position of, we made this choice and now we're stuck with whatever it is. So having, the ability to use, so I think this is really a step in the right direction. So it's exciting. I
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
say, it took me a really long time to learn to jump into RStudio.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know why. I guess it takes me a long time to change, but
Yeah. Well, I think that's just very common. And it's something like, if you think about an IDE where you're used to working, like it is so it's so related. You're like, your brain knows what to do, it knows where to go, and to like change that is a big deal. It's a big deal. And I think that like it's a pretty big deal to ask someone to try out a new IDE. You're like, is everything is different. Everything is in a different place. And I mean, Positron will feel pretty familiar to many RStudio users, but it's not exactly the same. It's not exactly the same. So it will take some shifts.
yeah, I'll just have to be careful what little thing I'm clicking in, which
Yeah.
is what I mess up with in RStudio all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
okay, thanks. Let me ask the questions of the others have asked. So one person said, "Thanks, Julia. Is there an anticipated official release date for Positron?" And then P.S. Thanks for tidy text.
Oh, that's great. Yes, I love, thank you very much for that kind word. So yes, we are currently shooting for middle of this year. And so like, July-ish is when we are shooting for. And so, like so for Posit's like customers, like the people who pay Posit money for our various products. So like they would pay Posit for Workbench with Positron on it, and so that is going to be right now. It's all like beta, 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 try it out, but be careful. It's like that. That's kind of our messaging right now around it, and that is so that's going to happen Q3 of this year. That it goes like out of that into like, nope, this is just part of our regular suite of products for the desktop app, which is like the free one that you get, and you can like download for any kind of commercial use or use in wherever. So that one will like what we're shooting for right now is July is when we're shooting for like taking the beta label off and calling it still
1.0.
yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. So that's the timing. That's the timing that we're shooting for on that.
Sounds perfect. Great. Okay. I'll try not to be so slow in converting, or at least trying it out
Well,
anyway.
I do want to emphasize, I don't think anybody should feel pressure to switch. I really don't. I really don't. If you don't have some of those, like Positron was built with a certain kind of user in mind, right? And if you're like, well, that's not actually me. Like if you truly only ever use R, and you haven't run into something that you're like, I'm so frustrated because our studio doesn't let me do X, like it's like I honestly do mean like you shouldn't if your needs are met with your current thing, there is not a is this is built for someone whose needs were not being met, not necessarily someone whose needs. It's not like, let's replace the thing that works. No, it's like we think there is this pool of people, quite a lot actually, whose needs weren't being met, and we're building for them. So we're not building to replace our studio. We're building for a kind of different space in the ecosystem of people out there.
No, that's a really good point. It's not that everybody always has to change. It was sort of similar to what Quarto and
Yeah,
Markdown that
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um
yeah,
yeah, again, whatever works for you.
yeah.
Um Great. Okay, we have two more questions. Oh, by the same person. Okay, good. I've been using Positron for a while now under its beta, and I've been really impressed with it. However, I've been holding back on promoting it within our agency until there's a better defined timeline for its official release. Oh, I think you already answered that.
Yeah, yeah. So official release would be this summer, like July, the July release is the one we're targeting for that. So, I think it's interesting either for inside of an organization, you don't, do you want to tell all your coworkers, including the ones who are maybe a little hesitant, like, you should all try this brand new thing that's in beta? Like, probably not. And it also is interesting, I think, when it comes to teaching, because I mean, I know like many people, their first exposure to RStudio was in a class, like was in a college class. And
And that's all they know. They don't really know, our GUI or something,
right,
right?
right, right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so like we've talked to people like, is Positron ready for teaching? And it is coming out of beta this summer, but I am a little on the fence about people who might want to use it this fall in a classroom setting. But I think actually the question is like, are you teaching R or Python in that class? Because if you're teaching R, probably better to stay with RStudio, because it is, it is solid, it is stable, it is battle tested. If you are teaching Python this fall, and you're deciding between like, maybe like an intro course for Python might be all in Jupyter Lab, and that may still be the best situation there, because then they're not dealing with their environments themselves, right? Like you're
Yeah.
bringing them an environment ready to go, and they just have to come and like type in a browser, right? So that may be better for an intro class, but maybe a class that's kind of like a level up of like, okay, now you're more advanced, you need to manage your Python environments yourself. Then I think Positron would be a good fit for that kind of class. But it's I think like a little bit of a case by case basis. So we'll see how things go with teaching this year, like this fall.
Yeah, I think those are really good things to think about, because sometimes I I personally tend to get like, oh, I've got to get the latest thing or whatever. And then I have to uh, kind of rein myself in and say, do you really need this? Is this really the smartest thing to do? Maybe you don't need the gold standard or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, on the other hand, I have to be careful that I'm not like dragging my feet and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
have
yeah,
to, they
yeah.
have to force me
Because of
to
change. Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah, to learn something.
yeah.
Um, Great. We have one more question. I've been following the GitHub commits and issues, probably pretty knowledgeable, and have seen a lot about Positron Assistant as an LLM-based coding assistant. Can you talk a little bit more about that and the interface, what it can do, etc.? That's interesting.
Yeah, so if you were to download Positron today, this is not available yet. Like, this is not available to our beta testing users, because there is a fair amount of work still to be done to get this like ready. But this is one of the features that we're excited to bring to people. So basically, but like high level, like a very data science aware LLM based type coding assistant. Like, if you've seen how Copilot works, or if you've ever like asked ChatGPT for I need, how do I do this? And, or like, I know how to do this in R. How do I do this in Python? Here's what, like translate this to Python, or, like something like that. So the two main modes that we're looking to support right now are completions. So this is like
Oh,
spicy autocomplete, like complete autocomplete on steroids, right? Backed by these large language models. And so that's one mode, is completions, and then the other mode is chat. So it's where it's like there's a window open, you can chat back and forth with the LM to understand code that you may already have, to understand an error, to understand like there's a bug here, it's doing this instead of this, like how do I fix that? So those are the two kind of modes. This is nothing shocking, right? Like, this is how all of these things work. Is These are the two modes, chat and completions, that I think are most people are expecting and used to. We do think that in 2025 bringing a IDE to market that without AI code assistance
Mm.
like LLM based is like a no-go, right? Like this is table
Yeah.
stakes these days, right? Like for how many people work. And so we are excited to be working on that. We are we will have support for different kinds of model providers. So the goal will be that like depend because some companies or organizations are like all in on Copilot. Some are like we use Anthropic, we use Google, like so we'll have support for different kinds of model providers and support for the two main modes of how people interact with LM coding assistant with their chat and completion. So this is not something that's ready today, but it's not a secret that we're working on it. Like, this question asker asked, you can see it in GitHub, and we'll definitely do plenty of like announcements about like when it's ready to go for early adopters to start working on and to start kind of experimenting with it.
That sounds pretty cool, but you're right, that's almost, required nowadays.
Yep, yep. No, it's true. And so in our studio, if you've hooked our studio up to an LM provider, those are just completions. So we just get the completions, and there's no well, you can do a chat component via a Shiny app if that is what you want, but that's a slightly less than ideal experience there. So, yep, no, I think the reality is that it is table stakes for a new
Yeah.
IDE, and I don't think we're doing something super innovative in terms of the UI or how people are interacting with. It will feel quite familiar if you've used Copilot, if you've used Cursor, like the UI will feel quite familiar. I think we are innovating in the sense of doing data science specific prompting so if you were to compare what Positron has, say, compared to VS Code, um, we have more context that is in the main process, like the main thread, and so we can prompt the LLM with more details of your data science workflows. And so in our initial the work we're doing now, we're really happy with the results that people are getting because the architecture of Positron lets us prompt with more context about the data science work you are doing, which helps you get better results back from
I
these
think
these LM things that are like they're these giant sort of monsters. How do we use them usefully so we're able to help people have better results?
yeah, make it more focused,
Yeah,
on the domain, right, that you're working with, which makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
Um, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I think, given, that these LLMs and AI thingies, agent, whatever they're called,
yeah,
are everywhere now that,
yeah,
but it does seem to make sense too, not to be too crazy, at least to start with. Um,
yeah. Yeah,
see
yeah,
how things
it's
work.
exciting. It's exciting to work on. It's exciting to see these new features getting ready for people.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much, Julia. I really appreciate you being here today and talking about positron. I feel more positive about it.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. That's what I
Uh,
like to hear.
so, so maybe I will download it on my personal computer and kick the tires, so to speak. And
Yeah. If any of you are here, do that. We would love to hear feedback. And so the best way to do that is GitHub discussions. And you can come if something doesn't work or you have a question. We'd be really happy to hear feedback from anybody who's willing to give it a try.
great, thank you so much, Julia. We really appreciate you being here today and giving us some good insights into positron. Like I said, I've learned a lot, and I'm kind of excited now about it.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. That's
Maybe
great.
I'll learn Python.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be honest, like UV plus positron are the things that really got me unstuck with Python. That I'm like, "Oh, now I can be productive with this?"
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna try.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. You can keep an eye out for the April announcement, but I'm really grateful to have you here, and especially Julia. Thank you again, and maybe we'll get to see each other at some point in person. All
Thank you for
right.
having me.
You're welcome. Take care. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.